I want to talk for the last time about the period from 1870 to 1900. I want to talk for the last time regarding the period from 1870 to 1900, and I want to talk about a variety of political-related problems of the era. Political-related problems of the era. Where to begin? Okay, where to begin? Why don't we begin here? Okay. By about 1873, there is a very severe depression that sets into the United States, the very severe depression. This depression lasts for the greater part, actually lasts for about 6 years. By the 1880s, there is a pickup in the economy, but by the 1890s, once again, the country lapses into what will be a very severe depression. There is a great deal of economic fluctuation that takes place in this Gilded Age. This 1870 to 1900 period is sometimes referred to as the Gilded Age. And it's referred to as the Gilded Age, ladies and gentlemen, because it looked good. It looked like it was full of progress and advancement. But in many ways, it wasn't. In many ways, it was deeply flawed. And maybe some of the economic uncertainty that existed in the period points out why, or one way in which it was deeply flawed. Let me briefly say a couple things about the Democratic and Republican Party, but don't go to sleep on me when I tell you this, okay? Ironically, the two political parties were relatively equal in this period of time. Write this down. The two political parties were relatively equal, despite the fact that the Republican Party would be the dominant party that would control the presidency. The Republican Party would be the dominant party that would control the presidency. Sometimes it had control over both branches in the Congress. But despite that fact, the Democrats were not that weak opposition, or not as weak, the Democrats were not as weak as one would imagine them to be weak. Why would one imagine the Democrats to be weak? Think like a fox, okay? Why would one think that maybe the Democrats would be weak? You know this, okay? But listen to her. Go ahead.
The Republicans were in power before Reconstruction and after Reconstruction.
All right. The Democrats were looked upon as a traitorous party. So that very often the Republicans would do something. They would take and wave what was called the bloody shirt. And when they said wave the bloody shirt, that was merely a way of saying, look at this blood-stained shirt. Who's responsible for this blood-stained shirt? The Democrats. Do you get the idea? So the Democrats were often referred to as a kind of a traitorous party. That tells us to a great extent, write this down, that white people in the South overwhelmingly would be identified with the Democratic Party. Whites in the South would be overwhelmingly identified with the Democratic Party. And the Irish in northern urban areas would be identified with the Democratic Party for a multitude of reasons. So you've got this rather odd amalgamation of people. You've got whites in the South who identify with the Democrats. Stay with me. Whites in the South identify with the Democratic Party. Why? Help me. Why are white Democrats? Why are whites in the South? Why do they identify with the Democratic Party? Yes, you do. Because the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, that was the party that they believed brought on the Civil War. And what about blacks in the South? Well, blacks in the South, they're voting Republican. Although we know that black voting numbers are going to diminish greatly. So if blacks are voting Republican, whites in the South see themselves in opposition to blacks, and they see themselves in opposition to everything that as you know, that the radical Republicans stood for. And so whites in the South identify with the Democratic Party. What about the Irish? What about the Irish in urban areas? Well, the Irish overwhelmingly being Catholic, having large families, being very working class, they were looked upon as a group that, let us say, that the Republicans often said, in effect, were hyphenated Americans, were working class, and there's a degree of anti-Catholicism in America that the Irish are particularly sensitive to. Hold on a second. So the Irish very much identify with the working class inspiration of the Democratic Party. So the Democratic Party represents to the Irish working class people, but the Democratic Party represents to white Southerners the idea that government should be small, that the federal government can be onerous, and that the Republican Party in particular is a party that they see as hostile. Do you get the idea? Now, we don't have, we can, are you listening to me? We could continue to make such statements. I'm not sure it's worth very much to us at this time. Stay awake. Stop fogging out. Go ahead, young lady. Your question, quickly. Come on.
Was this the same time period as the...
1870 to 1900. That's what we're talking about.
No, I was just asking, is it the same time where it was like no Irish need apply?
Well, one would see lots of anti-Irish sentiment in America at this time. And one saw a lot of anti-Irish sentiment because the Irish came in 2+ million. They had large families. They were very working class. There was a lot of anti-Catholicism. Don't forget, the society is overwhelmingly a Protestant society. America is overwhelmingly Protestant. And so the Irish then, bringing Catholicism with them, in a sense, challenge the existing society, so to speak. I have to ask myself a question. Are there any other reasons that there is this anti-Catholicism? Well, many people believed that being Catholic made an individual less likely to, let us say, have total allegiance to the United States. People felt that if you were Catholic, you had an allegiance to the Roman Catholic Church, which could conflict with the allegiance to the United States. Do you get the idea? Now, that is totally, completely prejudicial in nature, totally unfounded, but it was a belief that some anti-Catholic people spouted. Just to take this a step further, one of the most popular books of the 19th century was an anti-Catholic tract, The Secret Diary of Maria Monk. Don't write this down. The Secret Diary of Maria Monk. Second to the Bible and Uncle Tom's Cabin, which were enormously popular. This book, The Secret Diary of Maria Monk, was extremely popular. It was a hoax. It was a complete lie. What was it about? It was about a nunnery that alleged existed in Montreal, in which there was, if you will, all kinds of hanky-panky between priests and nuns and children being born at midnight and all kinds of blatantly anti-Catholic ideas. It was a complete fraud, but it was a fraud that was very, very popular. Do you get the idea? Does it tell us something when a fraud is popular? It really appealed to people's prejudices. Can you see that? The anti-Catholicism appealed to people's prejudice. And there would be other people that would go through similar things. Are you listening? My point is, when you look at the Democratic Party, you see then a party that is composed of a rather diverse constituency. Write this down. The party tended to favor states' rights over the authority of the government, over the federal government. It tended to be a party that favored small government, local government, and state government. The Democratic Party favored small government, local government, state government. Point number 2, the party tended to favor a low protective tariff. They wanted a low tariff. They wanted a low tariff. I'll talk more about this in a minute. And point number 3, they wanted loose money. They wanted a, what kind of a tariff did I say? They wanted a low protective tariff, and they wanted loose money. Okay? I have to explain this. Okay? Listen, don't write, just listen. The Democratic Party, being a working class party, wanted to have more say in the kind of products that they could buy. The Republican Party, the Republican Party tended to be a party that favored a high tariff because the Republican Party was composed of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants who tended to have high ownership in American industry. Write that down. The Republican Party tended to be a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant party. The establishment. They're the establishment. Being the establishment, listen to this, being the establishment, they own the factories. They own the banks. They own the factories. My name is Richard O'Clayman. You know the O'Clayman family? I'm from the O'Claymans. I'm a working class Irishman in Malden, Massachusetts. I work in a factory owned by a person who's a Republican. They want a high tariff. They make ties in the factory. They want a high tariff. They want ties to come into the United States that'll have a high tax put on them so that most people will buy the ties that I make in the factory. A high tariff, what does a high tariff do? A high tariff forces people to buy domestic-made products. Write that down. A high tariff, listen, a high tariff normally forces people to buy domestic-made products. Except rich people. Who wants a Mercedes? Okay, you want a Mercedes. Good. You don't care about what it costs. You follow me? Rather than a Ford, you want a Mercedes. You realize that there's probably a high tariff associated with it. The Republican Party, ladies and gentlemen, the Republican Party was that white Anglo-Saxon Protestant party that had a high degree of ownership in America, regarding American infrastructure, regarding the banks, the insurance companies, in the factories. Write that down. The Republican Party owned the banks, the factories, and the insurance companies. Do you follow me? They're the ownership people. Are the Democrats ownership people? They're workers. Hold on. The Democrats are workers. They're not ownership. The Republicans want there to be high tariffs. They want there to be high tariffs because they want to control the domestic market. Write that down. The Republicans want to control the market. The Republicans want to control the market. Hold on a second. The Republicans want to control the market. As a working person, I am in a bit of a dilemma. I want a job. I want the factory to hire me. I want a job. But on the other hand, I want more choice in regards to the stuff I buy. Are you listening? I want a job, so I want the factory to hire me. But on the other hand, I want more choice. I have a bit of a dilemma. Can you see my dilemma? Richard O'Clayman, remember me? Working class stiff. I work in the factory. I live in Malden. The owner of the factory hired me, thank God. But everything I buy is expensive. everything I buy is expensive because I'm controlled by the people who own the factories? And how much do I make? Maybe I make $1 a day. Maybe I make $350 a year if I don't get sick. Remember me, Richard Clayman, I live in a shoe. I have 7 kids and I live in a shoe. I have 7 kids and I live in a shoe, and maybe I make $350 a year. See my teeth, or the lack of my teeth? I lost my teeth. Like I lost everything else. Because my name is Richard O'Clayman. And life is very, very hard. Stop there for a second. Questions? I saw a hand first. Go ahead.
The Republicans wanting to control the tariffs in the market, was that philosophical as well as...
Practical. Practical. If the Republicans own the factories, by the way, factories making everything, factories now making ready-made clothing, factories making implements for people's houses, because the society is becoming more urban, is it not? As the society becomes more urban, the society becomes more dependent. How many of you had coffee today? Coffee. Did you grow the beans? You didn't grow the beans. Did you crush the beans? You didn't crush the beans. What did you do? You just bought it. You're like me. You're a consumer. Your clothes. How many of you made your clothes? You didn't make your clothes. You bought it. You bought your clothes. You bought your clothes. You bought your food. You bought the beans. What the hell do you do? All you do is buy. Do you follow me? All you do is buy. Why do you buy? Because my name is Richard Clayman and I'm a working class stiff. I work. I work and I buy. I'm dependent on everything that I do. How many of you have never fixed a pair of socks? Throw them out, right? When you miss a button on a shirt, see you later. You have how many of you have never fixed a pair of shoes? Shoes you throw out. You replace them. You follow me? You buy it, you throw it away. Because you're dependent. This was a society that was increasingly a society noted by its, are you listening? By its dependence. People were dependent. So the people who owned the factories increasingly had a good thing. They were making everything for everybody. They wanted to control it. What did we say about Carnegie? And what did we say about Rockefeller when it came to market share? They were excellent at keeping market share, weren't they? My name is Richard Clayman. I own a tie factory. I sell 90% of all the ties made in the United States. I sell them. I want to keep 90%. I want to control the marketplace. That's what the Republican Party sought to do. It's good and bad, isn't it? Good because you work in the factory. Bad because my name is Richard Clayman. I make $350 a year. I wish I could get more for my money. I can't get more for my money. I'm trapped. What about the boss? The boss is a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant who looks at me like I've got 2 heads. That's another little reality. Other questions? Come on.
Isn't it better for the whole economy for our government keeping the high tariffs?
Good question. The Republican Party said, progress in America. Look at the progress that we have with steel and iron and oil and railroads and urbanization. Let's keep that progress. But it's working people who say, that progress is on my shoulders. Your progress, I'm carrying your progress. I'm not so happy with the progress. I want more. I want more. Are you listening? working people saying, I want more. That's why they're joining labor unions. That's why they're articulating a different vision of America. Okay? You had a question. Come on.
Now, in the South, mostly, there's large landholders, a lot of Democrats. Where does local, or domestic agriculture fit into the pie?
Hold on. Well, there are different kinds of agriculture. The plantation owners are supplying cotton to, let's say, northern manufacturers. So they're part of a national market economy, but they also control their region. They use race to their advantage. They're comfortable. They're comfortable where they are. There are many other agricultural people who have lots of problems, and maybe they do too. Hold off on agricultural problems. I'll return to that. I'll return to that in a minute, okay? Can you see the problem with the tariff? The Republican Party wants a high tariff. The Democratic Party wants a low tariff. Write that down. The Republican Party is in favor of a high tariff. The Democratic Party prefers a low tariff. Most tariffs will increasingly go up, so that in 1890 there'll be the McKinley tariff. Write this down. In 1890 there'll be the McKinley tariff, and most tariffs will go up in regards to protecting native industries. Okay, most tariffs will go up. There is an exception. The only exception is that very often there's one product that increasingly became a very important, powerful product that saw some give in regards to tariff protection, and that was sugar. Sugar that came from the Hawaiian Islands ultimately would have no tax put on it. Sugar that came from Cuba would eventually have no tax put on it, on a very small tax. And sugar that was made in the United States that would be produced in Louisiana and other places, sugar beets in other parts of the country, there was often an incentive placed on that. Why was sugar so important? Sugar was so important because this society, this very dependent society, had discovered canned food. Sugar is a critical preservative in canned food. Do you get the idea? So this society that is very dependent, as it's dependent on clothing, increasingly is a society that also is very sensitive to the canned food market. So sugar has a very special role in all of this. All right? More on that at another time. I said not only then, so we can tell Democrat and Republicans apart in regards to the tariff, but we can tell Republican and Democrats also in regards to something else, in regards to money. Write this down. In regards to money. The Republicans are a party that favor the gold standard. The Republicans favor the gold standard, meaning that the Republicans believed that the currency, our currency, should be reflected in our bullion, in the amount of gold that we had in our treasury. The Republicans wanted money to be tight. The Republicans wanted money to be tight. Or, said another way, the Republicans wanted money to be hard. They wanted hard money or tight money. If I borrow $10,000 from you today, and I pay you back, and I say, I'm going to pay you back in 10 years. I'll pay you back that $10,000. Who's going to get screwed? Why are you going to get screwed?
Because of the interest.
Because in 10 years, not the interest, in 10 years, we know something. the value of that money is going to be worth, she can buy a pair of shoelaces in 10 years with $10,000. Do you follow me? In 10 years, that $10,000, are you listening, will not be worth a great deal. The Republican Party wanted money to be worth a great deal, no matter when. Because why do they feel that way? They have the money, and they're the people who loan it out to other people. They're the creditors. Write that down. The Republicans are creditors. They're creditors. Do you follow me? They're creditors. They have money. They have money. My name is Richard Clayman. I have $2 million. I have $2 million. Do I want anything to erode my $2 million? I don't want anything to erode my $2 million, right? You can appreciate that. There's where the Republicans come from. They are creditors. Remember me, Richard O'Clayman, from Malden, the Irish laborer? I'm a debtor. I'm constantly in debt. I want to borrow $10,000 from you. I promise I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back in 5 years. 5 years go by, I don't pay you back. I'll say, give me 5 more years. Being a debtor, I want the value of money to what? To decrease. I want the value of money to decrease. Because hard money makes it difficult for me. I want money to be soft. I want money to be more flexible. I can take it one step further. You know what I want? My name is, remember me? Richard O'Clayman? I want money to be, I want to get off the gold standard. I want there to be gold and silver. Write that down. I want there to be bimetallism. I want there to be bimetallism. I don't want just a gold standard. I want gold and silver. I want bimetallism. Bimetallism. 2 metals. Bimetallism. I want there to be gold and silver because I want there to be more money in society. If there's more money in society, maybe I'll get some more of that money. If there's more money in society, maybe I'll get some of that money. And if there's more money in society, I want to pay off, remember the $5,000 I borrowed? I want to pay it off with more money. If I pay it off with more money, it'll be watered down, won't it? I want to water down the money. Write that down. I want to water down the money. Can you follow me? I want to water down the money. And why do I want to water down the money? Because that'll be better for me. That'll be better for me to function if we can water down the money. Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? And I'm not sure you can necessarily translate this to your own life. I'm not sure it necessarily translates to your own life right now, okay? Does it? Let me think for a second. If I doubled your salary, would you be happy? Yes, you'd be happy if you doubled your salary. But what if everything else also increased? Would you still be happy? No, it wouldn't be so terrific, would it? It wouldn't be so terrific. This society is a little different in this regard. Write this down. The best way to examine this money situation is to look at the problems that American farmers experienced. I want to talk about the problems American farmers had. The American farmers greatly believed that they were not making enough economic progress in life. Farmers believed that they were not making enough progress, even though they worked very hard, and they believed that their sacrifices were really what made America great. They believed that what they did on the Great Plains in growing food for the society should be greater rewarded than it actually was. Farmers felt that they had transformed America, but they did not believe that they were properly rewarded. Are you listening? Farmers did not believe that they were properly rewarded. Point A, why weren't they rewarded? Get it together, Brittany. Point A, why weren't they rewarded? Point A, they felt that the railroads charged them too much money. They felt that they were victimized by the railroads. Farmers felt victimized by the railroads. Remember me, Richard Clayman? I have a farm out in Utah. I've got 1,000 acres of land out in Utah, and I'm growing corn out in Utah, but I need the railroad to get my crop to market. The farmers felt that railroads were taking advantage of farmers, charging them too much to haul goods and to haul passengers. Write that down. Farmers felt the railroads were taking advantage of them, charging them too much money to haul goods. The railroads are a problem. Point B, the banks are a problem. The banks were charging farmers too much interest. The banks were charging farmers too much interest. Farmers were constantly in debt. Write that down. They were constantly in debt to the banks. Farmers were constantly in debt to the banks. And they were angry about always being in debt to the banks, and they felt that the banks weren't taking them into consideration. Point C. Point C. Listen to this. Don't write yet. Have you noticed that there are a lot of cars that are for sale right now? How many of you noticed there's a lot of cars out there? Okay. Have you noticed there's a lot of houses for sale out there? A lot of houses, right? A lot of houses for sale. A lot of cars for sale. Have you noticed, how many of you go to the department stores? Don't be ashamed. Okay. A lot of cucker in the department stores? And everything's 70% off, 60% off, 99% off. We're having a sale, 99% off. There's a problem here, isn't there? Problem. Too many cars, too many houses, too much everything. That's a problem of deflation. When there are too many goods, not enough buyers. Write that down. Deflation. Too many goods. Too many goods, not enough buyers. Too many goods, not enough money. That's a problem of deflation. 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 Too much stuff, not enough buyers. Do we have that problem today? There's a lot of stuff out there, have you noticed? Not enough buyers. Right? We got a lot of people being laid off. We got a lot of people who are making less money. We got a lot of people with no jobs. We got a lot of people who thought they had money, and Madoff came along, and now they have no money. You know what I mean? Right? We got a lot of people who thought they had money, but have no money. We had a lot of people who thought they had a well-paying job, but they don't have a job. We had a lot of people who were buying the big BMWs and the big Mercedes, but now they're not buying them because we have deflation. Remember me, Richard Clayman, a farmer in the Great Plains? I grow corn. I grow corn. I was getting 60 cents a bushel, and then all of a sudden, I go to bring my crop to market, and now I'm making 30 cents a bushel. So you know what I did? I came home. I told my wife in the shoe, remember me, the 7 kids in the shoe? I said, we're going to borrow money from the bank. We're going to the bank. We're going to borrow money. We're going to get 1,000 acres of more land. We're going to buy another tractor, and we're going to work twice as hard. And we're going to grow much more stuff. And that's what we did. We borrowed money. We bought a tractor. We worked twice as hard. Put your hand down. We worked twice as hard. We grew a lot more stuff. I brought my corn to market. Now they want to give me 20 cents a bushel. Because I worked hard, everybody else worked hard. We swamped the market with stuff. We grew more stuff. We grew a lot of stuff. There's not enough buyers out there. Do you see the problems the farmer has? What's the solution from the farmer's point of view? Give everybody more money. If everybody had more money, they'd buy more stuff. Write that down. The farmer felt that the problem of deflation would be solved by bimetallism. Do you write that down? The problems associated with deflation would be solved by bimetallism. Problems having to do with deflation would be solved by bimetallism. In other words, if everybody had more money, the farmer believed, if everybody in the society had more money, then the society would spend more money for food. How many of you have been in a supermarket, almost been run over by some guy or some lady who's got a carriage that weighs about 8,000 pounds? You know what I mean? Sometimes they got two carriages. They got two 8,000-pound carriages, and they're full of stuff. A farmer would say, that's a pretty picture. A farmer would say, that is a pretty picture. I like that picture. Because the farmer basically said, give people more money, they'll buy more food. But professor, if everything costs more money, then wouldn't it catch up with the farmer? No, the farmer would say, because the farmer would say, I got to tell you something about me. I'm cheap. I don't spend a lot of money. I want other people to spend money, but you see me? I have holes in my socks. I have nothing that's new. Nothing new here. I don't spend money. I'm cheap. So I won't be affected by it. I won't be affected by it. I want everybody to have more money. I believe people will buy more food with their money. The farmer felt that deflation would be solved by putting more money into the system. Flood the system with money, not just gold, flood it with silver. Flood it with gold, flood it with silver. Pump up the money supply. Pump the money supply up. That's what the farmer wanted. What would the Republicans say to that? Are you listening? What would the Republicans say? Are you nuts? The Republicans say, you pump up the system that way, that means, what have you done to my money? Richard Clayman, I own a factory. Remember my $2 million? What have you done to my $2 million? You watered it down. You made caca out of my $2 million. I had $2 million, you made caca out of it. I'm not in favor of loose money, the Republicans would say. I want hard money. The farmers want loose money. Stop there. Questions? Come on.
Is there a reason why the farmers didn't, form some sort of...
They did.
farmers union?
They tried. They did. They tried. Greenbacks, Granger's movement, the populist movement. The farmers eventually, by the 1890s in particular, the farmers will even run people for president. The farmers tried to organize. Women play a very critical role in organizing the farmers. The farmers try to organize. The best that they really can do is connect with the Democratic Party. The farmers will connect with the Democrats. Hold on. And that will give them their platform where they will fail. The farmers connect to the Democrats. William Jennings Bryan runs for president in 1896 and in 1900 and is defeated. The Republicans say, we saved the country by destroying the farmers. So look at the Democrats. Hold on a second. Look at the Democrats. White Southerners, Irish and other working class urban people, and farmers. It still doesn't work. The Republicans are still in control. Quick, come on, follow up.
I didn't mean like a political party. I meant something, that day's version, something like OPEC. I mean, someone who, they set the price of something.
No.
What would have prevented that?
Knowledge, logistics, courage, a million things. My name is Richard Clayman. I've come to organize all the farmers. The camera's on me. I'd be waving with my fingers. What am I, Joan of Arc? That didn't work. It doesn't work. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. The farmers tried. They preached. They made success in farm country. They would be successful. The society was a society that very much tried to become a market economy and was in certain regards. But that kind of organization that you're talking about, that didn't exist. That just didn't exist. You want them to go on strike. You want them to burn the corn. You want them to organize. You want them to make the other people in society suffer, to know their pain. It wasn't ready for that yet. But they did try. The populist movement was an attempt to get the farmers organized. More questions. More questions. Are you thinking? The Democratic Party, then, is a party that wants a low tariff and wants money to be cheap. They want money to be plentiful, cheap. Get the idea? The Democrats want a low tariff, and they want money to be cheap. There will be some attempts. You're like a little kid in kindergarten, okay? There would be some attempts to raise the money supply. There won't only be a McKinley tariff, but there'll be the Bland-Allison Act and a couple of other acts in order to pump a little bit more silver into the economy. But it's not enough. The meager attempts in the 1890s to pump up the money supply by putting some silver in was not sufficient to really solve the problem. Okay, more on that in another time. Are you there? Are you breathing? More questions from you. Are you thinking? The Republicans want a high tariff and they want money to be expensive. They want money to be hard because they're in control. Go ahead. Yeah, come on.
Wouldn't bite Democrats in their own butt if they lower tariffs and water down money? Like, were they thinking about like the future, or were they just trying to fix their problems for the right now?
No, that's a good question. No, they were trying. Are you okay? They were trying to deal with their immediate problems. And I think that they thought, listen, they didn't have the answers. Do we have the answers economically in our society today? How are we doing? How are we doing? How are we doing out there solving our problems financially in the United States today? God knows what the hell's happening, right? God knows. Is Bush still there? I'm not sure. Okay? So I'm not sure. We're not doing such a great job in solving our problems. That is, as of today. Maybe a month from now we will. But right now we're not. They were trying to solve their immediate problems. They were trying to solve their problems. And they came up with ideas. One idea, write this down. One idea that they came up with, one idea that became a kind of a dominant theme was the fact, well, we need to sell more of our agricultural products overseas. We need to have a greater presence in the world. We need to have a greater presence in the world. Hold on. Many people believe that we needed to have a greater presence in the world. Both industrial people and farmers believed that a greater presence in the world would mean that maybe we could sell more of our agricultural and manufactured goods overseas. Right? And many Americans, as I mentioned, were very interested in sugar, and so that made the Hawaiian Islands particularly important to the United States. In 1898, continue. In 1898, there will be the Spanish-American War. There'll be a short little war with Spain. In 1898, there'll be a short little war with Spain in which the United States will gain control of Cuba, the Philippines, and Guam. In 1898, there'll be the Spanish-American War in which the United States will gain control over Cuba, the Philippines, and Guam. The United States Navy will grow and be significant. And there'll be a guy by the name of Captain Alfred Mahan, M-A-H-A-N, Alfred Mahan, write this down, M-A-H-A-N, Captain Alfred Mahan, M-A-H-A-N, whose very significant book, The Influence of Sea Power in History, The Influence of Sea Power in History in 1890, published in 1890, The Influence of Sea Power in History by Alfred Mahan. Mahan is you're going to love Mahan. You're going to find Mahan totally, completely fascinating. Let me just explain a little bit. Let me explain. Don't write. Let me explain what Mahan says. By the way, Mahan is an example of how one individual sitting in a library can very often change the world. Mahan sat in a library in Rhode Island, down in Newport, Rhode Island, at the Naval War College library. And in the library in the summer, while everybody's going to the beach in Rhode Island, Mahan is writing this book about sea power. Mahan says this: the United States, he says, needs to reconsider itself. We're not really an Atlantic nation. We are, by destiny, he believes, we are a Pacific nation. Are you listening? We are a Pacific nation. We must look to Asia. We must have a navy second to none. Our navy must be a great navy. We have to be on both oceans. We have to be able to get from one ocean to the other. So therefore, we have to cut a channel through Central America in order to get our navy to both oceans. We need islands in the Pacific. Are you listening? We need Hawaii. We need Guam. We need other islands in the Pacific where we put water, guns, ammunition, food. Because there will be a rivalry in the world for raw materials. There'll be a rivalry, and there's only one country that is an ultimate challenge to the United States, and the United States has to prepare itself for this challenge. That's why we need that navy. We need those islands. We need those guns. We need the water and the food and the ammunition and the ships, because there's only one country out there that ultimately will challenge the United States, and we have to prepare ourselves for that challenge. And Mahan says, in that country, there is only really one country, he says, and that country, of course, is China. Only China can ultimately challenge the United States, he says, in 1890. How's he doing? How's he doing in the library? Remember the geek in the library? Well, the geek in the library paints, in a sense, a picture having to do with not only American geopolitical power, the relationship of geography and politics, but it's also deeply connected to America's economic well-being, too, to say the least. Get the idea? The Spanish-American War in 1898 will learn some of the lessons associated to what Mahan is saying, but Mahan's ideas will continue long into the 20th century. Hold on a second. Many people believed that if America could sell more agricultural goods to other people, particularly in Asia, and if we could sell more manufactured goods, maybe we would be able to, in a sense, provide those economic incentives to get the United States out of those periodic depressions that it would get itself into. And maybe we could create greater harmony between agricultural interest and manufacturing interest. Are you there? Questions from you, my friend? No question. Questions, ladies and gentlemen? Stop the music. Stop the music for a second. The tariff, the amount of money in circulation, foreign policy, the role of the farmers. This is a very can you see why Hofstadter says the political parties weren't that significant, or the politicians weren't that significant. Because the issues in a lot, the issue, there was, ironically, the issue, there was a great agreement about the issues. What they lacked was an understanding about what the solutions were. There was an understanding as what the problems were, but the solutions were very different. Here's where Hofstadter's essay is excellent. Hofstadter basically says, whether you're looking at railroad regulation, the Interstate Commerce Act of 1887, or the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890, attempts to kind of control society, we didn't do a very good job. It couldn't be controlled. It was too, we couldn't solve the farmers' problem. We couldn't deal with the railroads very well. We couldn't deal with money-related problems. We couldn't deal with foreign relations-related problems. Do the problems seem very, very complex? They were. Can you see how complex they were? So the 19th century minimizes, it doesn't matter who the president is. The problems seem to be greater. I'm going to stop there.